I want you to imagine going to the gym, signing up for membership, watching hours of fitness videos, reading about nutrition, and even memorize workout routines, but never actually lifting a single weight. You wouldn't expect your body to change, right? Yet, this is how many of us approach spiritual growth. We read the Bible, listen to sermons, highlight verses, and take detailed notes. But when it comes to practicing what Jesus taught, we often stop short. We stop at knowing the right answers, feeling convicted, or being inspired in a moment. We nod in agreement during church, but go back to our usual habits during the week. We may even think that conviction equals change, but it doesn't. Information isn't transformation. Inspiration isn't growth. We stop short when we don't take the next step. Actually doing what Jesus said, living it out in daily life, in our relationships, in our reactions, and how we spend our time. Jesus didn't say you will become like your teacher by learning enough, but by being fully trained. That word trained refers to a steady practice of discipline. In other words, it's not about one-time effort or random burst of motivation. It's about consistent actions repeated over time that shapes who you become. Like an apprentice who learns not by lectures, but by watching, doing, and repeating. Following Jesus isn't about gathering more facts. It's about becoming more like him in everyday life. And becoming takes time, effort, and habits. In this message, we're going to rethink how growth really happens. We will explore why left brain learning isn't enough, how Jesus grew his disciples through shared life and imitation, and how small habits can reshape our hearts. This isn't about more church things. It's about following Jesus in real life. We often confuse spiritual growth with gaining knowledge. And yet, if we're honest, we often don't see the kind of life change we hoped for. We still fall into the same patterns, react the same way under stress, and struggle with the same sins. Why? Our churches often lean on teachings and content, good for learning, but not enough to reshape our reactions, our relationships. But the right side of your brain is where attachment and emotional responses and identity are formed. It's where you learn who you are, how to relate to others, and how to live out what you live. That means a fully discipleship-focused life must include both sides of the brain. When we only engage the left side, we can end up with knowledge that doesn't touch our actual behavior. For an example, you might know that Jesus teaches forgiveness, but when someone deeply hurts you, you react with silence or revenge instead. Why? Because what shapes our real-time reaction is not just what we know, it's what we practice, what we experienced, and what we've emotionally absorbed over time. This is why someone can quote the Bible fluently, but still lack peace, compassion, or joy. It's why we can say God is our provider, but still live anxious about money. Our minds may know one thing, but our habits and reactions reveal another. That disconnect shows that spiritual growth is not just about more teachings. It's about different kinds of learning. Jesus didn't gather people just to teach them facts. He invited them into a new way of life. Jesus didn't just invite people to listen. He invited them to follow. Following Jesus is about imitation, not just instructions. It's about letting his way of life rub off on us through repeated exposure, shared experience, and practice. Think about how children learn. They don't start by reading manuals. They watch, mimic, try, and fail. And over time, they grow. It's the same for us. You can't think your way into Christ-likeness. You become more like Jesus by doing what he did in real time, with real people, through repeated efforts. If you're only feeding the left side of the brain, we are not truly forming disciples. We are producing listeners who agree but don't act. And that's not transformation, that's stagnation. So the question isn't just, what do you know about Jesus? But are you living like him? Are you becoming like him? Are you practicing the way he lived? Left brain learning helps you understand truth, but spiritual growth requires more than understanding. It requires a new way of life. And that starts with seeing discipleship not as a classroom, but as a journey of becoming. When Jesus called people to follow him, he didn't hand them a list of doctrines or send them to a classroom. He invited them into his everyday life. They walked with him, ate with him, watched him, interacted with the hurting, the proud, the outcast, and the broken. They heard his teachings, yes, but more importantly, they saw how he lived them. And over time, something happened. They began to imitate him, not because they memorized everything, but because they experienced him. That's how real learning happens. It's not just through hearing information, it's through practicing alongside others. You can't become generous by just studying verses on generosity. You become generous by actually giving. You can't become patient by just hearing sermons on patience. You become patient by being in relationships where your patience is tested. Growth happens through doing, not just knowing. Jesus said, everyone who is fully trained will be like their teacher. Fully trained doesn't mean just mentally prepared. It means shaped by long-term exposure, consistent practice, and close imitation. That's why Jesus used the model of apprenticeship, not lectures. Disciples didn't just sit and listen, they participated, and they didn't do it alone. They were in community. They saw each other's flaw. They encouraged one another. They corrected each other. They carried one another's burdens. That sense of belonging was essential to their growth. The church was never meant to be an audience. It was always meant to be a spiritual family where people grew together by living life with Jesus at the center. In today's culture, we often separate learning from belonging. We attend church service, sit quietly, take notes, and leave. But in Jesus' model, spiritual growth happens when you're close enough to see someone's example and humble enough to let others see yours. This is where the church needs to shift. Discipleship isn't a program. It's a way of life. It's showing up again and again to spaces where you are known, challenged, and encouraged. You grow by doing life with people who are also trying to follow Jesus. The early church practiced this. In Acts 2, we see a group of believers who were devoted to teachings, yes, but also to fellowship, meals, prayers, and meeting one another's needs. This wasn't a once-a-week experience. It was an everyday reality. Their lives were woven together, and through that shared life, they became more like Jesus. When we see someone forgive an enemy, not just preach about it, that changes you. When you see someone worship in pain, not just talk about trusting God, that impacts you. And when someone walks you through your doubts instead of judging you for having them, that strengthens your faith. Belonging is not just a nice bonus to your spiritual life. It's the environment where real transformation takes place. You learn how to live like Jesus by watching others do it and by letting others walk with you as well. You grow by practicing, by failing, and by trying again. Not alone, but together. So if you feel stuck in your walk with God, maybe the next step isn't more study. Maybe it's joining a group, serve with others, being honest about your struggles, or inviting someone to show you how they pray, serve, or love people well. Because we become like the people we are closest to. And if those people are following Jesus, they will help you follow him too. Discipleship isn't something you master on your own. It's something you live out in relationship. And you were never meant to do it alone. When most people think about spiritual growth, they imagine dramatic encounters, mountaintop mountains, and powerful sermon, a worship night that leaves you in tears. Those moments matter, but they don't shape your character. The truth is, who you are becoming is mostly formed by what you do every day, your habits. Whether or not you realize it, we become what we practice, intentionally or not. That's why your daily routines matter. Your phone habits, your eating patterns, your reactions to stress, this all shape your emotional and spiritual life. This is why Jesus focused on daily rhythms. He showed them how to live. He withdrew to pray often. He rested. He ate with people. He quoted scriptures in daily situations. These weren't one-time events. They were habits. And over time, those practices shaped the disciples to become like him. They were learning through imitation and repetition, training the heart, not just the mind. Spiritual disciplines are not about earning God's favor. They are about building a life that is open to his presence. Think of them as pathways. Each time you walk the path, it gets easier. And when your heart knows the path, your reactions begin to change. That's what discipleship is. Let's walk through 3 habits that can reshape our spiritual life, not just for the left brain learning, but for the whole life transformation. First, be with Jesus daily. Not check off a Bible reading plan or get through your prayer list. This is about relational presence. Take 5 minutes to sit in silence, to breathe deeply and remember you are loved. Read 1 verse and reflect, not to gain information, but to connect. The goal is not more knowledge, it's to feel seen, heard, and anchored in God's presence. This kind of stillness rewires your nerve system. It reminds your heart who you belong to. This is the part I struggle with the most. I'll be honest. I have a hard time being present, sitting in silence. I'm not speaking as someone who figured it out, but as someone still learning. I wanted to take this step with you. Second, belong to a group where you can be real. This isn't just go to a Bible study. It's letting yourself be known. Spiritual growth happens in community where you can bring your doubts, your sins, your celebrations, and still be loved. When you're part of a group that shares life, prays together, eats together, and stay consistent, it builds joy and emotional safety. That shapes your right brain. It gives you strength to trust, to heal, to become. Third, practice one thing Jesus said this week. Just one. Pick something simple and concrete. Maybe it's showing mercy to someone who frustrates you. Maybe it's turning off your phone during dinner. Maybe saying, I forgive you, even when it's hard. These are not abstract ideas. They are embodied habits. Doing this reshapes your default reactions. Over time, it trains your whole body and mind to respond like Jesus would, without having to think about it. That's the power of right brain training. Repetition builds identity. Now, here's the challenge. Everyone has habits. The question is, what is yours forming in you? You already wake up and reach to something. Is it your phone or the voice of God? You already spend your evening somewhere. Is it with others who point you to Christ or with screens that keep you numb? Our culture is constantly forming us. It teaches us to rush, to consume, to perform. If we don't choose our habits intentionally, we will be shaped passively by everything around us. And that kind of formation is not neutral. It leads us away from the heart of God. So don't underestimate the power of one habit. Start small, start real. Don't aim for perfection, aim for consistency. Let your habits bring you into the presence of Jesus, build connection with others, and shape the way you live. Because spiritual growth doesn't come from knowing more, it comes from becoming more like Christ. And becoming takes practice, daily, honest, slow, repeated practice with Jesus and with people who walk beside you. We grow best when we walk this out together. That's why we are now stepping into the conversation part of our church experience. This is where connection gets real and where we build the kind of relationship that helps us grow. This isn't an add on to church. This is part of how we grow as followers of Jesus together. So I invite you to be part of it. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and hear what others have to say. If you're watching the replay, drop your response in the comments. We would love to hear your voice too. And don't miss next week as we continue this series with Faith in Times of Change. We'll talk about transitions and how to stay grounded in uncertain seasons. See you then.
I'm going to invite all of the panelists to turn on the camera. And as we are getting ready for our discussion part of the service, I wanted to invite everyone, including those watching and not part of the panel, to reflect on what the sermon was about, the topic of today. And if you have any questions, comments, please share either in the chat or in the Q&A if you feel more comfortable not sharing with everybody else. You can also send it in the chat direct to me because you can do that as well. But I want to start with our panel. And I think I'm going to start with Johnny. Johnny, was there anything in the message that caught your attention that said, that's important or that's me?
You know, I think there was this one particular line that hit hard and hit right in the heart. And it was the line, when you wake up in the morning, what is the first thing you grab? What is the first thing you seek? And oftentimes that's not a voluntary or intentional decision. That's almost just a natural act. For me, it's without a doubt the phone. And it's an interesting situation where some people could say, I could say it's to see if there's been any emergency, if there's anything I need to know and be informed of. uh, but the other, and in a very deep reflective moment, I could tell you, well, that just shows where my priorities are. And that's a really humbling thought. It really is a thought productive statement. In does that act, because actions speak louder than words. So what does the act of grabbing your phone over maybe the Bible or anything else like that, what does that say about your internal priorities? It's definitely something that has me thinking.
And I wish as a pastor I could say, no, the first thing I grab is the word of God. But reality is the first thing I grab is the phone. Can we blame Apple? Can we say, you made all of us addicted? Well, first, I'm like, am I late? Did I miss the alarm? They put everything you need in your life basically in one little computer. I say that one thing I never forget is my phone. I cannot forget my phone because I can't get anywhere without my phone. If I forget my phone, I sit in a car and I don't know how to get to places. So I'm going to go back to get my phone. But yes, it's difficult. But how can we create a habit? Okay, after we look at the phone for the time and to see that there is no emergency, the next thing is God. How can we do that? I see Brandon wanted to talk. He's like, no.
So yeah, definitely agree with that. That's something that hit because it's almost, yeah, like involuntary, but something that kind of came out to me was obtaining more knowledge is not the same as spiritual growth,
Mm.
which I've never really heard it in that term or said that way. And it kind of hits because you think somebody who can use the fancy words, knows the parables, and is a good speaker. You think, oh, well, their relationship with God must be top tier. But if, like you said, after church or after whatever, if you could be a fly on the wall with them during the week, it may not look the same. And that goes back to what Johnny was saying, is actions speak louder than words, because if you can speak pretty and say all the right things, but then somebody else sees you not practicing what you preach, it has a negative impact on what they think and the light that you're trying to display or shine. You won't be able to get to them or penetrate the same if you don't practice what you preach. So it has a negative impact on others who are watching it and maybe looking up to you or looking for guidance from you. And then because of that, you could have a domino effect, and it's just one bad decision after the other, and you won't even know it. So
It is interesting that you're saying that because it wasn't recent. This was back when I was at seminary, but from the time that I became a Christian all the way to seminary was more than 10 years. And because my conversion was highly connected to knowledge, the first time that I heard that knowledge does not equals transformation, I was shocked. I was like, how come? And then the person gave an example that it really hit me. Uh, if knowledge translated to transformation, you wouldn't have anybody suffering with diabetes because, well, it depends on what kind of diabetes. Just an example, like everybody knows that eating healthier is better. Everybody knows that smoking is bad for your health. And still people know, but they don't stop smoking, And then I was like, wow, I never even thought of that. Anybody else? Abby, what do you have on something that hit you with the message?
So unfortunately, I have bad memory and I did not write down the thing that I wanted to talk about, but I think it was along the lines on something of like who you hang around. And I feel like that is very important, who we talk to, who we converse with. Not saying that if there is somebody that is not like you or does not believe in the same thing as you, you should just 100% block them and be like, I'm not talking to you because what you say is messy, what you say is this, and you say is that, and I don't agree with you. So you should just shut that person out and not be pleasant to that person. But I 100% believe that who you hang around is very important. I don't know about y'all. My parents used to tell me all the time, don't hang around with the with the wrong crowd. And it's just a fact. It's when you're little, when you're a teen, when you're a young adult, when you're older, when you're in the nursing home. Hopefully we don't reach that yet. I have a long way to go. But um it is very important. And just like how you say when we wake up, what's the first thing we reach for? I personally reach for my glasses, just to say. But then I'm not gonna lie, I do reach for the phone. And I would love to say it's to look up the Bible verse for the day. Um, I would love to say that every now and then it is. But also like when you wake up, it is ideal to think of God first because He is the reason that you woke up. And we all need to acknowledge that. I feel like that's the first thing to help us get closer to God in every single way. We need to acknowledge that God gives us our daily breath. And I don't know about you, but I'm so thankful for that. And then guess what we do with that daily breath? We go on Instagram and we go look at somebody eating weird food, and then we're like, ew, what is wrong with them? And then we go look at somebody and we're like, oh, they're eating pork. And then we start judging. And then we go somewhere else and we're like, oh my goodness, that person has so much knowledge on the Bible, not knowing what that person is doing behind closed doors. And now we are looking at that person, saying we want to be like that person, when all we need to be like is like God. It is very simple. Once you make Christianity simple and you realize that God is God and that is all that he is and ever will be, and that Jesus came down to give us a human example of how to live righteously, I promise you everything gets easier. So yeah, but I do reach for my glasses first, y'all. I do.
I don't think nobody's going to judge you for reaching your glasses. And guys, let's be honest, we shouldn't even judge for reaching for our phones either. We don't know what's happening in the person's mind. I think the secret here is not to judge what somebody's doing, but it's like, what is it that I can grow? It's not about what anybody else is doing, but like, um, I have a crazy life. I wake up late and I didn't have a chance to focus in God first, but my heart is in God and I will find time throughout my day and I will look for it because each person is different and everybody has their own struggles. That takes me to my next question. What is harder for you? To start a new habit or to stick to it? Let me start with Antonio.
All right. So for me personally, what would be harder for me to do is to stick to a new habit because learning a new habit is as easy as just, oh, is that what this is? Let me see if I can do it. But maintaining a consistent repetition or trying to keep a repetitive cycle or trying to say, all right, today, for example, I'll try not to reach for my phone and scroll social media, but just try to thank God every morning, thank you for this new day you've given me, this new opportunity to be able to live life, being able to still be in your presence. And so it it would be hard to just it's like kind of like going to the gym. It's hard at first, but it's just pushing through every day and making it a habit that just has to be hardwired into your brain and just sticking with that. That would be personally the hardest thing for me.
It's funny because when I started with this illustration at the beginning of the sermon about the gym, guess who I was thinking about it? I thought about Brandon. I don't know if you did it lately or if I just saw it recently, but he's coming into the gym and he's discouraged and then he's giving up and leaving and somebody just drags him and take him back to the gym. I love that video and I was thinking exactly about that video when I started doing with this illustration here. But yes, I agree with you. I think sticking with it's difficult. One of the things, and listen, as I was preparing this sermon, some of the sermons that God inspires pastors to preach, it's not to preach to you, it's to preach yourselves. I have a serious problem with adding new habits in my life, especially Christian habits. I wasn't raised like that. I didn't memorize the verses of the Bible. I didn't read the Bible. I didn't read period. I didn't like reading. Um, and the stuff that I would read wasn't exactly good. And so becoming a Christian as an adult, the little things that for some people it's like a second nature, like taking a shower every day. You don't have to think about it, just do it. Well, I would assume that everybody takes showers every day, but that might not be the case. Okay, what is another example? Eating food. I think everybody does that one. But anyways, my point is that creating a habit, it's not that easy. And that's why I came out and say, hey, I am not saying from the position of I got it. I'm saying the position as how can we walk together? And first of all, I like, and I think Brandon noticed too, because he said, I love how Ab is real. And I like for us to be real. You know, we struggle. We all have struggles. So let's not pretend that we're perfect, but we are here to journey on this together. I want to stick with the same question still. What is harder for you? Let's see, Gillian, what is harder for you to start or stick with the new habit?
I think a little bit of both. I think sometimes I feel like I have to have everything perfect before I start something. So much so that I remember anytime I've wanted to start the gym, I want to buy like new leggings, new protein, knew all the supplements before I start. And then I don't even start during the middle of the week. I start on Monday. It has to be on a Monday. So I think sometimes we get in our own way of wanting to be perfect before we even start the journey. And I think even in our Christian walk, sometimes we even want to come to God in perfection rather than allowing God to do the process of transformation in the journey. And I personally know that my willpower is not as strong as I would like it to be. I think there's a lot of areas in which the Lord has convicted me in, and I think it's so hard to start. And then once you're in it, you have to constantly be holding on to God in order to be able to continue. Because unfortunately, we don't have that willpower within ourselves. He he helps us grow it, but it's through constant connection. And I think the devil does a really good job of keeping us distracted so that we can't focus on the right things or in the things that God is calling us to. I recently heard about a place in our brain that's called the AMCC, in which your willpower grows and shrinks. The more you do something hard, the more that area grows. And then the moment that you stop, it starts shrinking again. So it literally is tied. The more you do and complete the habits and the things that you're convicted of, the more that area grows, which means that now you have more willpower and God will be able to continue to help you in that process. And the less you follow through with the things that God has called you to do, the more that area shrinks, which makes it even harder. So it made me think about how all the things that God has called me to, whenever I am closer to it, even though it's hard, I still feel some sense of momentum because I know God is with me. And I can kind of relate that the more I do something hard, the more God will walk me through it. And the more I don't do it, the harder it becomes because it becomes this huge monster in my brain that I can never start it because I'm not ready. And I think God will make us ready through the journey.
Wow, that is actually a very interesting fact that you just shared. Yeah, and it does make sense. I remember a experiment that they did with a little cat. As soon as he was born, they covered one eye, and because he didn't use the eye, he became blind. He wasn't blind when he was born, but as the very beginning of the development time, they covered the eye. He didn't use it, so it didn't develop. Uh, I know this is different to what she's sharing, but I think it makes sense with what you don't use, you pretty much lose it, you know? And and what you said at the beginning, I think that is a struggle for a lot of people. We wanted to get everything together. I am not going to start this until I know everything, I get everything, I have. Do you guys think, Johnny, what is your thought? Do you think that we overcomplicate things?
Always overcomplicate things. What? Everyone always overcomplicates things, but it's not intentional. It's not intentional. I think it's something fundamental within us where maybe it's fear, maybe it's not liking being in an uncomfortable or a non-normal setting. There is always so many inhibiting factors, and almost all of them that exist are not voluntary or intentional at all. But when you learn and make an effort to, for one, recognize and acknowledge that many barriers and many excuses and things that we say are keeping us from achieving what we're wanting to achieve, when we acknowledge that lots of that it comes from our own self, and and strategize and think of ways that we can address those things, well, then that opens so many doors and it's opened so many opportunities, you know. Someone told me something a few years ago, and it's always in the back of my mind, and is the one person that keeps you from success most often is yourself, you know. So whatever we're defining success as in this scenario, before we achieve that success, the first step in any situation is always going to be, well, what barriers exist, what inhibiting factors, what's keeping me from doing what I want to do, and you can fill in the blank of whatever that happens to be. And once you acknowledge all these first things. That's the first step. That has the potential of opening many doors, and in turn creating and establishing new habits to achieve even greater things. But of course, we always overcomplicate everything.
Yeah, I think that is something that us humans have the tendency to do that. Now, the next question that I have, this concept that habits change people. Do you agree with that? Do you not agree? Why and why not? Let me see. Let me start with Antonio. We're keeping him too quiet.
So I will say habits over time, they do change someone, whether it is for the better or for the worse. Um, for example, if we try to stick to reading the Bible every morning, having a short period of time and reflecting with the Lord every day, it starts you off on like the right foot. And I feel like just like you train at the gym over time, that affects you in a positive way. It makes you have a more positive outlook on the day, and it's like it gets you going. Hey, like, hey, Lord, like it's me again. Thank you for this day. I just I know deep down from within I may not have the strength to go on with this day. I ask that you provide me with that strength to overcome any obstacle that may come my way and to help me exceed and excel and perform my best for every day. And so that would be, I mean, over time, that does shift your mindset from a more negative one to a more positive one. I will say that's something I've been trying to do, and because I mean, before and sometimes even today, I'll have more of a what I call a realistic mindset, which is more on the negative side. Like, do I think this would happen? Am I really sure we can get this thing done? And so over time, I have been able to look at things more optimistically, having more optimism, developing that characteristic of optimism over time. Uh, yeah, it does certainly change you as a person over time.
So you agree that it does change. Any other thoughts? Anybody else that, what do you think on that?
I would like to comment. There's biblical precedent here that people can change, and what what changes a person is not their legal name. What changes a person is not the clothes that they wear or the things that they say. What changes a person ultimately is going to be their actions. And how do we determine what their actions are? Well, actions are a result of a habit or a belief or or an emotion and our way of publicly displaying our beliefs and our fundamental values. So if you have someone who used to have a bad habit, let's say, or maybe a non-Christian habit or an unhealthy habit, well, first thing they're doing is they're deconstructing that, they're establishing new habits, and in turn, that pushes them towards becoming a new person. If we look at the biblical precedents, I pulled up a list here. We have Abram to Abraham, we have Sarai to Sarah, Jacob to Israel. These were significant name changes, not just for the sake of changing the name, but because from going from one identity to the other identity, there were many habits, there were many beliefs, there were many emotions that had to be changed. And a lot of that is based ultimately in habits. And of course, a habit can be changed, and it's a very powerful thing when it does happen.
Brandon.
It was me. So when I think about habits, I think, of course, it's closely tied with who we're becoming. I think what's difficult about it is that we almost need to allow God to dictate what those habits need to be. Because I think through trauma and through what we've lived in life, we may not be the version of ourselves that God has intended us to be. And I think sometimes we need to deconstruct who we thought we were so God can put us and build us back together. And I think that revelation of who we're supposed to be happens through following little by little what God is instilling in us day by day. And we were in Bible study one day and we were kind of talking about that term from glory to glory. And when we hear glory, we think happiness, we think the greatest things are happening. And yes, when God takes you from glory to glory, you do experience a spiritual high. But I think the from and to is such an important piece, because through that process, it's God revealing himself to you while also revealing who he made you to be. And I think the more you learn about him, the more you learn about who you're meant to be. And that's why I think it's so closely tied with us figuring out who God is. And then from then changing my habits in accordance to what he's saying rather than what I think is good. Because the reality of it, God says that only he is good. So I think oftentimes we get so confused with what the world prescribes to be a good person, what is success, that we lose sight of what truly matters. Because even God says clearly, what is it to gain the world and lose eternal life? So I think that as we think about what those habits are, if we kind of like ask God to reveal what those habits need to be, is super important. Because I think it is so beautiful when you are discovering God and you're also like discovering yourself at the same time.
As something as well, I kind of wish I said mine first before she gave that wonderful answer, but it's kind of a piece of an idea. I think with habits, like she's saying, you need to strengthen your relationship with God so you know what habits He has in store for you. But I think what a term that comes to mind is it's a Mr. Miyagi effect. And if people don't know what I'm trying to get at is it's an indirect effect. Like God will teach you lessons or put you through something, and you want to ask Him, how in the world is this going to teach me anything? What am I supposed to gain or get from this? But he could have an indirect effect where he has you going through something, but it's to teach you something that's not even related with what you're going through, that would be beneficial to you or to somebody else later. So it's kind of like that wax on, wax off motion of doing something, and to your eyes, you don't see the end result. But if you stay fast and stick strong with him, in the end, you'll be able to see what his plan was. You won't know where you're going, but as long as you stick close to him, in the end, you'll see that it was something positive and something that helps you come out on top in the end. So
That sounds almost like when we like do things in church, we think that maybe being a deaconess or something, or even an usher, it's like, well, that's an insignificant role.
right.
What I really would like to do is be up on stage. However, sometimes God has to put you through the insignificant and repetitive actions to teach you that lesson of like, in order for you to serve me in the way that I want you to serve me, you need to go through these things.
Right.
And I think that is very biblical, because you see Jesus teaching the apostles washing their feet, which that was the lowest of the lowest job in the society at that point. So that is a great point. I want to go back a little bit to something that Johnny said, because it kind of clicked to me. Uh, I don't have an answer. I want to brainstorm with you guys. What do you think that, for an example, with Jacob to Israel, the change in his name, his identity was overnight? It was immediately. Do you think God can change people's character through habits and through a miracle? What are your thoughts? Can it be just immediately? We are thinking.
Um, so that I think that's tough to answer. But if that did happen and you knew the person beforehand, you couldn't help but have doubt and question, like, is this an act? What is there a side angle? And I don't know if that may reflect that you have something else that you need to work on
Mhm.
internally, but we want facts, we want results, we want consistency, right? So I don't know if I can answer that because I think it's possible. Like you could have a life changing event and something in your or God has allowed you to change your ways, and you're like, in order for this to happen, I need to change. But in most instances, because we're human, we can't help but doubt and maybe see some of the negative part of it and not believe it until we kind of see it again and again and again type deal. If that, yeah.
There's lessons in the transformation, but what does it say about who we believe in if we don't trust that God can do that immediately?
Yeah.
He can do it immediately. I think sometimes we're also attached to the work because sometimes, depending on the denomination that you grow up in, as Christians, we can be really attached to performative Christianity or performative behavior changing as a means to gain heaven.
Mhm.
And I think oftentimes when someone does a switch overnight, we're like, well, what was the work?
Mhm.
So I think it also goes back to God knows what each person needs, and some people need an immediate transformation in order to save them. Some people need to go through the work.
Mhm. I agree. John, you were going to say something?
I'm just gonna come at this from a different angle. It's a really hard question, you know, but I think we also have to give some thought to environment. What do I mean by environment? Sometimes you could have the right person who has the fundamental values, who has the correct habits, and has everything, but they're in an unhealthy or an ungodly or an incorrect environment. And sometimes that one immediate change that is needed is an environmental change. You know, I know many young people, for example, in the church who, you know, they're with one group, one environment, and they are living the life that definitely I would say God has for them, maximizing it, active, happy, positive, healthy. I mean, great. And it continues to be the same person. However, there's an environment change. They're with the unhealthy people, not the most positive or healthy people. And even though you have the same person, so many things are changed just by a question of the environment. So at the end of the day, the individual is responsible for the individual, absolutely. But we also have to be very fair and at least acknowledge that environment has a big part to play. And sometimes the change in environment is the last thing that is needed for someone to maximize their full potential. But of course, it's always understandable to be weary when we are looking from the third person point of view and see someone in such a dramatic change. It really is an impossible situation to define. That is truly up to the individual and God, and no one else could truly know.
Yeah, as that came to my mind, many things, as you guys are talking, many things came to my mind. One, I agree with Brandon. It's like when you see like that drastic change all of a sudden, us humans, we can't see the heart, we do question. But then I remember my change, and that started telling me, I'm talking about right now in this moment as you guys were talking, that maybe I need to take God out of that little box that I put him in and remember my beginnings. Because to be very, very honest with you guys, if you meet people that were going out to the clubs with me back in 20, ooh, how long ago was that? Well, it's been 20 years, at least 21 years, okay? We are in 2005, no, 2025, like 2005. Those people that I was hanging out in the clubs and drinking and going out and partying and meeting different guys all the time, when they heard, and thank God there was no social media at the time, when they heard that I was in the church, not a single one of them believed. Because my change in, I don't even know how to say if it was character, personality, was not the habits. Well, part of the habits, because I wasn't going out and drinking and doing all of that, part of the habits changed. And it was literally a miracle. It was from one day to the next. And let me tell you, from being an atheist and not believing God and none of that, for me, the biggest proof that God exists is my change, because my change was very radical. But I have to say that I think that that kind of change is rare. I believe the change that God uses the most is the continuous change in the work that you put, the journey that you put. So I think God put something in my mind that clicked and said, I want to change. And the actual changes it started in a long journey, because yes, some things I stopped immediately. Okay, I didn't go to the clubs anymore. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't partying. um, my husband and I decided to get married because we were living together. So some changes were immediately. But even my behavior wasn't immediately, in a sense of I still talked in a way that wasn't appropriate. I changed the way I dressed slowly. So I think God uses, and also the environment. So I think it takes work, it takes God's miracles, it takes a change of environment. I think it's a combination of everything. As we're talking, I'm putting all of this together. Um, that any other thoughts on that before we move to the next one? Okay. What is one small thing that you have done that helped grow your faith? Antonio, do you have anything that you have taught, that you have done,
Small thing.
or big?
Um, mm,
If not, it's
I,
okay.
it's just I think I've mentioned it before, just trying to spend a little time with God every morning
Mhm.
before scrolling social media would be my thing that I will say, yeah, definitely helps a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. How about you, Abby?
I would say it's actually quite similar, but I actually don't tend to do devotions in the mornings. I do it in the evenings because in the mornings, I don't comprehend anything. I am thoughtless. I look like honestly, even when I look on the phone, if it's not someone that actually texted me, it did not register. So I tend to do a devotional in the evening or right before I go to bed because for some strange reason I comprehend it better. I wind down, I've taken my shower, I wash my face, I'm comfy. Praise the Lord for blankets. And I'm just, I'm at an all-time calm. I'm peace. I can just think, focus on God. And also, no one's really texting me. In my opinion, there's less distractions because I go to bed late, like 2 a.m. in the mornings. Lord help me with that. So everyone's practically asleep, or they themselves are probably just watching a movie at night. So it's less distraction. It is quieter. I don't feel like I would have to rush because I would have to get things done during the day. So that's personally how I have tried to get my grow my faith in God. And I think it's been working because I try to be more optimistic. I try to be more peaceful and happy and think good things about people because let me tell you, there's some people that will test your Christianity. I will tell you my Christianity has been tested like 2 weeks ago.
Eh,
Oh my goodness. And I'm not gonna lie. I didn't pass the way I should have, but I asked for forgiveness and now I'm at peace with God. So yeah.
yes, yes. So now I know, don't text you in the morning, text you in the afternoon. Got it. Now I know how to communicate with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Nobody was referring about me, by the way. She just wanted to keep me anonymous, is what happened. No, I'll tell you something that I've been doing for a while, and it's been probably one of the things that's kept me most grounded in my faith. It's a micro action. I consider it to be so small, but every time I'm getting ready to eat something, at least, 3 times a day, the big 3 meals a day, whenever I pray prior to eating, well, those are at least 3 times a day that I'm already connecting with God, you know? So sometimes I'll be like at lunch and I'll be like, God, thank you for this day. Thank you for this food you've given it to me. Please let it be good. And I'm like thinking, well, I'm talking to God already. So God, help me with this too. And God, I also have this on my mind. So it's an involuntary, it's not planned. It's definitely sudden, but those are opportunities that have allowed me to express some of my concerns and fears and petitions to God. You know, and it's at least three a day, and three a day times all the days that you eat and all the days that you're alive. Those are many opportunities to continue to grow and maintain your relationship with God. And as long as you eat, that's an opportunity right there, so that's been huge in me, just maintaining, because every time I eat, as you can tell, food's very fundamental to me. Every
I
time I eat,
noticed.
I am also growing with God in a very small way.
That is interesting. Um, what do you think is easier for you? And I'm going to start with Brandon and Gillian. What do you think is easier for you, to grow with people or to grow on your own?
I'll go first.
Oh yeah.
Definitely by myself. I was never a person to like group projects because I feel like it's hard to rely on others. So I would just do the whole thing and just be like, just write your name on it. So I definitely would say by myself, but I think being married has really challenged a lot.
You're married?
No, I guess not. It has challenged a lot in the sense that now you become one, so you work as a unit. So I think even my spiritual life has been shaken in the sense that now it's not just about me, and like also it's like whatever God has worked in my life, now it's like, okay, let's see if it actually stuck. And I think those are the ways that I'm seeing like God come through. And also, it has helped me be more inclusive of BJ in my own spiritual walk, because now one of the questions that I asked him before we got married was, if one day I woke up and I decided to lose my mind and I no longer believe in God, what would you do to keep me grounded? And I think that helped me realize that the community helps you stay grounded whenever you go through hardships and whenever you start questioning things that maybe you hadn't questioned before. Sometimes you need the strength of the people around you to bring you back and to even sometimes call you out in love. And even though I prefer to be alone, I think that God is challenging me to see the value in community and to really open your heart and mind for others to speak life into you. I think oftentimes I can be very vulnerable, but I've realized that's not true vulnerability because I've already worked through it. I've already allowed God to do whatever He needed to do. So it sounds vulnerable to you, but it's not vulnerable to me because I've already worked through it. So I think the next layer of that is God is working on me so that I can share things that I'm actually going through in a moment's notice and actually ask for prayer. And I think that's the way that I'm inviting God through community, even though I prefer to figure it out by myself.
When you started talking, I actually was going to challenge you because I said I like to do things on my own. And as you start talking, before you said marriage, because I was actually going to touch on the marriage, but you did it already. Because one thing is to do a group project. I hate group project, hate it. It's always one person doing all of the work and everybody else getting the credit, or we need to wait for somebody else and they're slow, they're not doing the work, and that gets me upset. I never like that. So I can see why you say I like doing things on my own. But what I'm noticing is with spiritual growth is a little different. There are certain things like, because you like to do things, and from what you described, like before I go to the gym, I like to have this, I like to have that, I like it. So because you have got used to your individual life, God said, let me send you Brandon, because there's other things that you need to grow. So it's not that we like, the question is, how do you grow better? Do you understand? It's like, I like growing by myself, leave me alone. But how do I actually grow better? Is it alone or with other people? Were you going to share something, Brandon? And I interrupted?
Oh no, no, that's you didn't interrupt. I do. I think it depends on. I think it depends on what we were trying to grow in. But like you said, spiritual growth tends to be a little different because depending on your community, I would say it's very important. But people don't. Well, at least I don't like to fail in front of people,
Mm.
right? So if you come from that mindset, you kind of want to work on your craft, work on things, study, and develop a habit or practice and do things by yourself, and then bring it to the light. But then I guess that in reflecting, that will say what type of relationship you have with or the type of community you're in, because everything's stronger in numbers, and if you see somebody else failing, that could also be encouragement to want to pick them up. So community, like you were saying, I feel is very important. And then being with the right community to provide that environment of trust and no judgment, to be able to fail and feel like, we know we're not perfect, but we're striving to be like God. That positive community can definitely help and encourage to want to grow in groups.
And having that guy bring you back into the gym.
You're right. Right. So good.
Yes, absolutely. Anybody else? How do you grow better?
Personally, I think that like I am also one to like to be by myself, always do group projects by myself, stick to myself. I will be honest, I'm an only child. I do everything by myself. That's just how I am, how I've been my whole life. But I remember I think I saw a video on something, and basically it's good to have a group of people because not only do you get to converse with them and talk to them about God, but also it somewhat helps with accountability. Sometimes your spiritual journey, we are going to have spiritual highs and lows. And sometimes you really do need that person to drag you back into the gym. I am not one to go to the gym. If you see me in the gym, help me. I'm not there voluntarily, help me. But you still need those you need people to help you to be accountable. And it's also great when you already have that connection and you know that they truly are doing it out of love. And it's not that they're judging you, it's out of concern. And sometimes, yes, you need to take a like sometimes they need to leave you alone a little bit and you have that one-on-one with God to reconnect. But then you also have that group that you can come to and be real with. And then you as well see how they respond to maybe your spiritual low. And then when your friend also is having that spiritual low, you know how to help them as well because you have created that bond, that relationship with your friends and your close group, and that will help you with your spiritual journey. So that's all I wanted to say.
Oops, Antonio, you're too quiet.
So I'll be one to say that, I mean, like pretty much everybody else has said, I prefer or I like being by myself when it comes to growing, but I will say I grow better in a group setting because you have other people that I guess like Abby said, keeping you accountable and also having a support system. But even if it's with people who sometimes you may not always agree with everything on, like for example, like the Jesus, whenever he picked the 12 disciples, he didn't pick people from one single background. He picked each person from different jobs, different occupation, different social status, and had them come together and with like love and compassion show the world that even though they may not agree on every single thing, that they can come together and work and grow spiritually for a common good, like God's work and stuff like that.
And the people that Jesus picked, we wouldn't pick it. We would
Yeah.
judge all of them, and we would not be the ones that we would pick. We are getting to the end of our session. I want to just ask if there's anything else you guys wanted to share that I didn't ask, but you thought was interesting. If not, you guys can think. We have a couple minutes still. While you're thinking, I want to make a couple announcements. One is that the church online, which we still haven't given a name to this baby. We I already had so many ideas. If you guys have suggestions, let me know. But anyways, one idea that I thought after you have no idea the struggle to put a name. You have no idea because everything gives a hint of something that it could be problematic. But anyways, I thought about the Way Community, an online church. The name would be The Way Community, an online church as a subtitle. Anyways, this is one idea. You guys let me know what you think. Isa said it. Yes, you liked it? Cool. Um, what was gonna say? Okay. Right now, the way that the online church is going is that we're doing seasonal. We go for 8 weeks, we take a break, and then we start again. So I just, because I just want to let everybody know that we're gonna finish the first season, which is the summer season. We are finishing August 30th, and the fall season starts on October 11th. We go for 8 weeks, and then we are out for the holidays, and we start again. And later, when we do the last one, I want to send you guys a survey because I want to know how we're doing, what we can do better, and also for you guys to give ideas and share with other people. Now, one thing that I do want to do is that I want to have our online church to be the place for us to connect, but I also wanted to have our connecting in person. August 17, I'm having a barbecue in my house, and you are all invited. And I know Spartanburg is so far, but I don't know, maybe you guys decide to drive over here. But yeah, so you're invited. We're doing a barbecue, and we're gonna have, by the way, barbecue it doesn't mean pork to me, okay, guys? It's grill or whatever that is called, and we're gonna
Want it
have
so pork though, just a little bit. Never hurt nobody.
stop it. We're gonna have the real meat and we're gonna have the fake one. So make everybody happy. Please let me know. I'm gonna send a text inviting people. If you're not in the Charlotte list, you're probably not gonna get. That's why I wanted to share here to let you know. I need to have an idea how many people are coming so I can buy the supplies. But we are coming to an end of our fifth episode. Church Online has episodes and seasons, okay? And thank you so much for participating. For those that are in the panel, for those that are listening at home in the chat, I love you all. I really appreciate having this time with you. I know this is usually nap time and it's a sacrifice to be here, but it's for a greater cause. It's a place to create connection. It's a place for the people that are outside that would not go to a building yet to use this as a bridge. So remember to share with your friends that we have this now. This is a space for young adults, and all of the topics are specific to what you guys are going through in your life. Next week, what was next week that I forgot? I prepared all of the sermons already and I have all of them mixed in my head. Anyways, you will see an announcement. Thank you all. Kisses. Thanks, everyone. Those in the chat. See you soon. You guys were awesome. Thank you, Brandon, Gillian, Johnny, Antonio, all everyone. Thank you.